They think about you all the time, but they don't speak. They don't show it. They don't act. They just watch in silence, as if that's enough. As if the other person should understand everything they feel without a single word being said. Meanwhile, time passes, and everything turns into doubt. Why all the hiding? Fear of feeling, fear of giving in, fear of being real? Or is it easier to pretend nothing is happening, even when the entire body reveals otherwise? If there is truth in this feeling, why so much cowardice? No one was born to be a mind reader. No one deserves to live waiting for what never materializes. Love is not an eternal mystery. Either it reveals itself or it gets lost. And when it is lost, it doesn't help to try to rebuild what was never fully lived. What is not said doesn't hold up. What is not accepted crumbles. No one can be certainty in the life of someone who only gives doubt. You cannot demand presence when you offer absence. You can't call something a feeling if it only reveals itself halfway. Because in the end, a lack of action isn't protection, it's omission. And omission corrodes. Silent, constant, fatal. Time passes, and along with it, everything that could have been dies. There's no room for truth where there is too much silence. There is no love where everything must be interpreted. Those who feel, speak. Those who want, show. Those who love, confront. Those who disappear have already answered. Those who hesitate choose the no, even without saying it. And life doesn't stop to wait for those who lack the courage to live. Time doesn't pause for those who don't know what they want. While watching from afar, someone is growing weary inside. While holding back what they feel, the other begins to empty. Because unreciprocated affection turns into absence. Unacknowledged desire turns into indifference. And when lack becomes a habit, affection dies. No one is here to carry feelings alone. No one was made to insist on what hurts. Love demands reciprocity. Without it, everything becomes a burden. It becomes silent pressure, waiting in vain for a response. And no one can endure that for long. After a while it wears you down, after a while it hits you. After a while you realize that the absence of action is also an answer, and one of the harshest ones. When the answer comes like this, in the form of absence, in the form of silence, in the form of nothingness, there's nothing more to ask for. It's not pride, it's not haste, it's not intolerance. It's just the awareness that the time has passed. It's already been made too clear. Those who care, show up. Those who feel, take responsibility. Those who don't act, don't feel enough. The problem is that you learn to accept crumbs thinking it's just a phase. You get used to overanalyzing, to justifying everything. You wait for a change that never comes. You hope for a gesture that never arrives. And in this process you lose your self-worth. You silence yourself to keep close what never truly commits. You shrink yourself to fit into a space that was never offered. But there comes a point when even the heart can't stay silent anymore, because the body starts to respond. The laughter disappears, the sparkle dims, the lightness turns into a burden. Everything starts to irritate, even what once delighted you. And it's not because the feeling has vanished, it's because the absence of action killed everything that could have been love. Those who choose not to show it choose to lose. Those who hide behind fear decide not to live. And those who postpone their feelings watch them die without realizing. Because everything has its limits. Even hope gets tired. Even desire runs dry. Even the strongest affection gives up. And when it gives up, it's not loud. It's quiet. It's cold. It's final. And then it's no use bringing late explanations, with declarations that only appear when the other person is no longer there. Because love doesn't bloom in the soil of neglect. Feelings don't survive carelessness. And affection can't be recovered with promises after everything has crumbled. Those who don't care lose. Those who don't show let it slip away. Those who don't value reap distance. And then it's too late. And when it's too late, running won't help. Searching for what was ignored won't do any good. It's pointless to miss what was never truly built. Because absence has consequences. Because those who waited for a gesture learn to move on without it. And once they've learned to move on, they won't come back. Not because they've stopped loving, but because they've gained clarity. Clarity to understand that one doesn't beg for attention. That affection isn't something to be solicited. That there's no point in insisting on someone who only brings doubt. that you can't build with someone who isn't willing to hold on together. The day comes when the memory still exists, but it no longer hurts. When the name still comes to mind, but it doesn't squeeze the heart. When the absence is still felt, but it no longer wounds. And that's when everything changes. Because when the other person realizes there's no turning back, there's no more space that was once whole. Because what isn't filled with presence closes off. What isn't cared for breaks, and what breaks doesn't return the same. It's not about pride, it's respect. Respect for everything that was ignored, for the time that was offered, for the feelings that were silenced, for the patience that was exhausted. You cannot go back when you've lost too much, because there's no speech that can repair what was destroyed by silence. There's no excuse that can rebuild what wasn't supported by action, and there's no late arrival that can heal the constant absence. Those who lack the courage to live must learn to deal with what they've lost, and understand that time does not wait for those who hesitate too long. Because those who feel now. Those who want show it already. Those who love do not hide behind excuses. It's pointless to come with words when they no longer touch. When what hurt was precisely the lack of them. When what was missing was exactly what is now being attempted to be offered. Too late, cold, empty. And that's what remains. The echo of what wasn't said. The bitter taste of what wasn't lived. The absence of everything that could have been but wasn't. And once it's no longer there, it's pointless to try to fix it. You can't recreate what was unraveled by choice. Because doing nothing is also a decision. And that's what became clear. While one expected action, the other remained silent. While space was being created, the other withdrew. While possibilities were being built, the other hid. And then everything starts to change. It begins slowly. It begins in thought, in the feeling that something no longer fits. In the realization that there is more silence than words, more absence than gestures, more uncertainty than commitment. And when this settles in, there's no going back to the starting point. You can't return to what has already been surpassed. Little by little, what was once desire becomes distance. What was once longing turns into fatigue. What was once love becomes a memory, and no one can love what hurts. No one stays where the feeling becomes a solitary effort. No one can bear being the only one to sustain what should be shared. Love is not silence that erodes. Love is not absence disguised as freedom. Love is not constant doubt. Love is not endless waiting. Love is presence. It is action. It is courage. It is the willingness to build even in fear. It is the daily decision to not run away. And if that doesn't exist, then there's nothing. Those who truly feel do not disappear. Those who truly want do not hold back. Those who truly love do not vanish. Because paralyzing feelings are not love. They are confusion, ego, insecurity. And no one needs to accept that as sufficient. Time reveals everything. It reveals who was present. It reveals who only claimed to be there. It reveals who fought. It reveals who hid. And when it reveals, it also frees. It frees from false promises. It frees from expectations built upon those who never wanted to give what was necessary. It frees from illusions nourished by minimal gestures that were never enough. And when you are freed, you don't return to the same place. You don't repeat the cycle. You don't accept less. You don't allow again what has already destroyed you inside. Because the pain has taught, and self-love has demanded. Self-love doesn't shout. It doesn't require explanations. It doesn't plead for a return. It only understands. And when they understand, they leave. No drama, no scenes, no warnings. They leave because they've waited long enough. They've believed too much. They've diminished themselves too much. And nothing came back. Nothing but empty promises, restrained gestures, silences that said everything. It became clear that the other never truly wanted. They wanted control. They wanted their ego stroked. They wanted the security of being desired without ever needing to commit. But there's an expiration date, a shelf life, a patience limit, a pain threshold. And when it's up, there's no more room, no turning back. Those who give less than they are capable of lose more than they know. Those who hold back when they should express themselves watch their feelings die slowly. And once it dies, it doesn't come back to life. Because it wasn't just love that was broken. It was trust, it was presence, it was care. And once that's shattered, it can't be rebuilt with words. No one needs to stay in something that hurts. No one should remain where they have to explain themselves all the time, where they need to hide what they feel so they don't seem too much, where they have to measure their offerings so they don't scare off someone who has never known how to handle the truth. There's no value in relationships sustained by doubt. There's no beauty in hidden feelings. There's no sense in waiting for someone who chooses every day not to get closer. And it doesn't matter how much you desire, how much you imagine, how much you dream. If the other is not there, they are not there. And that is enough. It's hard to accept, but it's necessary, because moving on is essential. And moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It means respecting what you feel to the point of not humiliating yourself over it anymore. It means looking within and understanding that those who give their all don't deserve halves. That those who offer clarity cannot accept doubt as a response. So let them go. Let the door close that was never truly open. Let go of the weight that only brought weariness. Respect what was felt, but don't look back, because what wasn't claimed at the right time doesn't deserve a place in the future. What hasn't been lived with courage no longer deserves to return. What has been neglected should stay in the past. The heart learns. And when it learns, it doesn't make the same mistake twice. Once the heart learns, everything changes. It's no longer about need or illusion. It's about clarity. Clarity about who stayed when it was easier to run away. Clarity about who fell silent when they should have spoken. About who had every chance and didn't know what to do with any of them. Because time doesn't erase, it reveals. It reveals who truly loved. And who only loved the feeling of being loved. Who was all in, and who merely took up space, and when awareness arrives, there's no attachment that holds on. Everything that was a wish becomes a decision, and the decision is simple, not to return to the place where one had to beg for presence, not to go back to the absence disguised as affection, not to reopen the door to someone who didn't know how to walk through. Absence can be forgiven, but it cannot be forgotten, because it leaves marks, and the marks don't shout, but they speak all the time. They say, here, too much was waited for. Here, there was silent suffering. Here there was belief in what was never said, and what was never said became unbearable. Because no one can endure living trying to decipher someone who doesn't want to be understood. No one can sustain a relationship that has never fully revealed itself. No one can be strong all the time when, on the other side, there is only distance. Then comes the break. Not the dramatic break filled with screams and slammed doors. It's the clean break, real and definitive. The one that happens when there's no more energy to insist, when the other's silence becomes a sufficient answer, and the whole body understands. It's not worth it anymore. That's when the period is born, not out of lack of feeling, but out of excess pain. Because love shouldn't be so lonely, it shouldn't hurt like this, it shouldn't leave someone feeling less for giving more. And what emerges from that final period is not bitterness, it's strength. The strength of those who stopped trying, the strength of those who stopped accepting the bare minimum, the strength of those who decided they deserved reciprocity, not just physical presence, but a present soul, truth given, feeling experienced, wholeness, not halves. Once silence becomes the answer, nothing more needs to be said. Absence sustained for too long turns into a rupture, not because love was lacking, but because courage was lacking. Courage to feel, to own up, to stay. Courage to show through actions what was never firm enough to say. And when courage doesn't come, someone gives up. Gives up insisting, gives up waiting, gives up hurting themselves trying to understand what was never clear. Time doesn't heal everything, but it reveals everything. It reveals the truth behind the delays, the unanswered messages, the promises never kept, and most importantly, it reveals how much was lost trying to keep alive what only one person fed. The truth is that no one was made to live in doubt. No one was born to be almost. Either it is or it isn't. Either you invest fully or you step back. A middle ground only serves to postpone the end, and when the end arrives, there's no warning. Just the fatigue of someone who carried too many feelings, alone for too long, and the decision to no longer accept less than what they deserve. Those who truly feel don't hide. Those who love confront. Those who want care. Because what is hidden too often gets lost, and what is ignored for too long will simply leave one day. It leaves without anger. It leaves without drama. It leaves with the calm of someone who understood their own worth. And those who leave don't come back, not out of pride, but out of respect. Respect for what they felt, for what they offered, for what they didn't receive in return. If this resonates with something inside you, don't ignore it. If this truth screams in your chest, share your thoughts in the comments. It's time to speak what has been trapped for so long. To let out what silence has held. To acknowledge your own limits. Like this video if this message strikes a chord. If you want to keep receiving content that encourages you to look within with courage, subscribe to the channel now. Here, there are no cliches. It's straightforward, just like life demands. Now, it's up to you.